welcome this November the 3rd, 2020 to our committee meetings this evening. I'd like to special welcome to Colin McLean. Welcome back, Colin, from the Journal Pioneer. It's great to have you back, and it's great to have the Journal back, even though it's just going to be weekly, but we'll keep working to try to get it back to daily. So it's great to have you, and we have our police chief with us tonight, our directors. We've got Gordon McFarlane, we have Aaron McDonald, we have our CAO, Rob, and our new Director of Finance, Kristen, and we have Linda Stevenson from Tech Services, and our friends from the taxi stands. And Brian Harlick here on my left is he's running the controls. And November the 3rd, 2020, it's a bit of an anniversary for me. 49 years ago, at exactly this time, 5 o'clock, I started my first shift at the Summerside Police Department. That was just a couple of years before Chief Poirier. But anyway, it brings back some memories. Wonder where the 49 years have gone. You know, a little bit of silver hair and a couple extra chins, but I'm still in the go. Anyway, the first item on the agenda is for the Planning Board, so we'll turn it over to the Chair, Councillor Brian McFeely. The floor is yours, sir.
I think we have to just amend the agenda.
Oh, is there, which one is it?
For the Fire and Police Emergency Services.
Okay, we can do that now then before we get to it. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
No, that's no problem.
Number 4, the CS25 Taxi Bylaw Review.
Right.
We're going to move that up to number 1.
Good.
And just go down respectively after that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ramsey. So is that a friendly amendment by everybody that we change the agenda? We're not changing it, we're just moving an item around.
Your Worship, I thought we were going to do the taxi bylaw item first, like right off the top.
Sure, we can.
If that's okay.
Well, it's not, I think that's what you just suggested, wasn't it?
I think he means, I was going to wait to go down, before Planning Board. If we could do it before Planning Board, is that what you're thinking? Yeah.
Yes,
sure.
Yeah. Okay, we'll start off with that item then, Councillor Ramsey.
Is that okay with everyone? Okay.
Fine.
So welcome everybody to our monthly committee meeting for Police, Fire, Emergency Services. So on the agenda is the taxi bylaw review, and I am going to pass it over to Councillor Carey for that.
Councillor Adams, the floor is yours.
Yes, actually, and Rob is taking it.
And CAO Rob,
Yep.
okay.
Thank you, Councillor Adams and Councillor Ramsey. What we wanted to do tonight, at the last meeting of Council, there was a first reading of a resolution to adopt proposed changes to the CS25 taxi bylaw. Just for everyone's information, representatives of the Bylaw Policy and Review Committee, both at the council and staff levels, had an opportunity to review some, first of all, draft and propose some changes for the bylaw with the intent of trying to streamline some of the regulations that are captured within the bylaw, try to reduce some red tape and place less of a, I'll say, a regulatory burden upon the taxi industry, while also protecting residents of the city who avail of taxi services. So a couple of weeks ago, we did do the first reading of the proposed changes. The purpose of tonight is just to have an opportunity for members of the public and the taxi industry to weigh in with any comments or questions or feedback or concerns that they might have around some of these proposed changes. The documents have been shared with them. They've had an opportunity to review them. They did also thanks to all of you as well for participating and engaging with the Bylaw Policy and Review Committee some time ago to discuss these proposed changes. But the purpose tonight is for anyone, if you wish, to offer any comments that you might have on the proposed changes, and we'll go from there.
Councillor Ramsey had a question?
No, I was just going to say, if anyone would like to speak, just go to the mic and just state your name and your address, and then carry on.
Just before, I believe Councillor Campbell was going to ask a question.
No, I'm a little confused. Wasn't Councillor Adams working on this, not Councillor Ramsey?
So Councillor Campbell, what had happened was this was an item that was identified for the Bylaw Policy and Review Committee, and at that level, Both staff and council undertake research of the issue in question, irrespective of whether it's administered by police or whoever. After we get through, I guess, the first level of review and the first reading of the proposed changes, then we turn it over to the relevant council committee to be able to follow through on any proposed changes. And in this case, it's police services.
Thank you. Okay, whoever has the floor is to speak. Yes, your name and address?
I'm Chris Pye, owner of Air Cab in Summerside here. I live at 146 Ottawa Street in Summerside. So I've got this, I'm just looking here. You guys are putting in including for ride sharing. So does the ride sharing cars have to be affiliated with a taxi stand as well? That's the intentions of it. So if they're going to do ride sharing, they have to be part of a taxi stand in Summerside to do the ride sharing. That's good. Just it doesn't word that in there. When you go over to any car, the cars have to be affiliated with a taxi stand. It just doesn't put ride sharing in there, I don't think. Taxi cab operator, 15 on,
14.2.
yeah.
And
Every
Chris,
licensed taxi cab must be affiliated and employed with a licensed taxi stand, so maybe ride-sharing cars should be in there as well.
Maybe, Gordon, you should come to the mic if it's going to be recorded. Just have our in-house lawyer here for his comments.
thank you. And Chris, do you mind speaking right into the mic? I don't know. think I'm just going deaf
That
over
better?
here. Thank you. Thanks so much.
No problem. Section 14.2.
Right. The intent, the way it's drafted, is that, so if you go back to the definitions in 2.1, that a cab or a taxi cab also includes a vehicle that's intended for ride sharing.
Okay. Just
So
when
it
you go
would
over
fall in-
section
yeah.
14.2,
Yeah.
it's not stated in there. That's all, so.
Gotcha.
The next one on here, if you go to section 8.1, you guys are asking for a $2 million liability from $1 million. What justifies bringing it up to $2 million? Like I have Charlottetown taxi stand down there. My bylaw for Charlottetown is only $1 million right there for the Charlottetown. So I'm just curious as why you want to jump that up to $2 million.
That's a great question.
Because in doing that, every taxi cab that's affiliated with a taxi stand, their insurance is, depending on the star rating from 1 to 3, is going to put it up from $250 to $350 a year. To someone like me running 8 cars on a fleet, that's over $2,000 a year in increase.
So where that number came from is a recommendation from our insurance company, but
Okay.
I think that's something for council to take under consideration for sure.
And I think it's one that even like government uses
Yeah.
for any staff members that are, I think that's sort of the going rate for that now.
What's that?
I just know that I always had to carry $2 million in my car when I was working for the province, because if
Yeah.
you were taking anybody with you or anything like
Right.
that, you had to carry $2 million insurance. And I still carry the $2 million insurance, because in today's world, $1 million is probably not sufficient coverage for liability kinds of issues.
Yeah.
So.
The gentleman brings out a good point, though. If the city of Charlottetown is one, it makes it difficult if we're going to be 2 million versus Charlottetown.
And there's nothing ever in the taxi history, to my knowledge, and I've been asking around since I seen this, if there was anything justifiable to bring that to the 2 million mark. And nobody's showed me any evidence whatsoever in order to put that up to the 2 million. I could see if something happened and somebody didn't get a good enough payout for something, but it never did. And I go back to Charlottetown, I have the stand in Charlottetown, and we only have to have 1 million for Charlottetown, so.
Right.
I think what's important to remember is that we're, I'm not sure when Charlottetown's was last updated, but we're updating this to bring it in line with what insurance companies are requiring. So
Excuse me.
But
I
the
don't
insurance
want it to come
company-
out wrong, but we're just not going to do it because Charlottetown's doing it, sort of. It's to
But like-
protect you guys as much as, like, do you know what I mean? If anything,
Yeah, but then
God
we go
forbid was to
back down to
happen.
the taxi fares. If you're not gonna regulate the taxi fares and get the taxi fares up, you know, there's gonna be some guys go out of probably business with this insurance going up, because that's a
Right.
whole monthly payment right there or more that they're gonna have to come up with. And a higher down payment next year whenever they go to do, it's $700 down payment, so you're gonna be looking at it probably 800, you know, so.
Can I ask a question? So right now, Chris, you have $1 million coverage, right?
Yes, yeah.
And has your insurance company ever came to you and said, Chris, you should have 2 million on every vehicle? Like, that's not been anything that, so if we didn't regulate it at 2 million and just left it at the million, it wouldn't be a problem for the insurance company that you're dealing with?
No. It used to be 500,000.
Right.
And then they put it up to 1 million, and now it's wanting to go up to 2
Wanted to go up to 2,
million.
and I totally, because I work for the province as well, and all of a sudden, I always had $1 million, and then all of a sudden I had to have 2, and I was like, what happened there?
Yeah.
So it did change a couple of years ago, so whether that has to change, you know, for you guys, you're not the province, so maybe that would
Right.
be, you know, something that we could look at, I guess.
Isn't it something that
worth-
council could consider before it's etched in stone?
Yeah.
I just don't understand why Charlottetown being a big, like twice the size, with way more taxis running, and they're just running with $1 million liability. What
Yeah.
makes Summerside say special or need, what do we, why do we need the 2 million instead of 1 million?
I think as Carrie said, though, like, we're just updating this, and
Yeah,
that was sort
I
of
realize
the
that,
recommendation,
but,
and
yeah.
they haven't updated theirs maybe for a number of years, and so it's still at 1 million. Who knows, right? But it's certainly something we can check out, I
Yeah.
think. as
yeah, and that's
council.
something we can take back to bylaw and discuss that. The reason that number was picked was just when we were in the discussion in the room with the committee, just a random asking was everybody's insurance companies in the room seemed to think that 2 was that's what they were requesting all of us to have as
Right.
personal people who might have to take somebody along with them sometimes. So that's where that number came from. But we can take that back and discuss it, and then we can go from there. Is that all right, Gordon?
That's what I mean, so like when I'm running 8 cars, plus personal cars and everything, like I don't need $2 million coverage on a brand new truck that I'm driving, you know, like when I'm hauling my family around, I don't have $2 million liability, you know, like it's, so,
I think council decided that they would reconsider that or discuss it again.
yeah.
Could I,
Right.
go ahead.
Go ahead, councillor.
I just, can I ask a question? I respect you're making those comments, and I'm just wondering, Chris, is that the opinion or the feelings of everybody that has taxis within the community? And if there is going to be some comments come back to council, I wonder if we should hear that from all of the taxi.
Well, I can tell you, all the
outlets.
owners at my taxi stand don't want the 2 million,
Okay.
because like I say, there may be 1 or 2 if their insurance goes much higher, because the fares aren't regulated in Summerside whatsoever.
Right.
They'll probably go out of business, basically, so.
But I guess council, we need to be sure that everybody that has taxis feels one way or the other. Like, we can't make a decision if there's some people that drive taxis or have taxi cabs that feel differently. So I think it would be really important for council to hear that
From all taxi
from all
stands.
taxi drivers
Yeah. all
that have to
stands.
pay that.
Would it be fair to say that if someone wanted to put $2 million on that, they could?
They could, I could
Do you know
go
what
up
I
there
mean?
right now and
That's
and
something
do it
that
at my own, I could put
People
whatever,
can decide
yes.
how much they want, but what
Yes.
we regulate, I guess, is
Yeah.
the question. Yeah.
What you regulate, we would have to go by, or
Right.
we could buy more. It's up
Right.
upon ourselves, yeah, so.
Okay, we have lights on this side. We finished, Deputy Mayor? I think Councillor Snow and then Councillor McDougall, I think. That's the way the lights come out.
It's pretty much been said, but if we could make sure that we get sort of an idea of when Charlottetown has 2018, so they're 3, I think we need to make sure that we're looking at whatever the industry standards are across the board, and then from that make a decision. If we don't want to overburden the taxis, but we don't want to be back here a year and a half saying our bylaws at a date because we didn't take advantage of the time we had now to do it. So we just need to make sure that we're looking across the board. It's at industry standards and go from there.
Thank you.
We can come back to that question. We can come back to the other operators that are here as well, if you guys want to comment on that portion of it after Mr. Pye is done.
Do you want to go with any more comments on that item first? I just had one question, not on that, but it was something you had talked about earlier.
It's you guys, Mr. Arson. Did you want to? No, you're good. Miles, okay. But you guys know you can contact me directly, and we can talk about it, and I can take it to bylaw policy review. Okay.
Can I go ahead with one more? Section 13 there, I see you didn't, I don't know if you looked into that about delivery of alcoholic beverages. Did you look into about the marijuana store, because that's not in there as well? So is that prohibited as well before we do start doing it, or do you know what I mean, since it's not in there? They're both a drug, they're both legal to do. I don't see the reason why we can't deliver it, be safer than somebody getting in their car and driving down the street drunk because they want that quart of liquor, and we could have delivered it to them and they kill somebody or something. We're not.
Do we know what's the industry standard on this? Is this something that Charlottetown, they're allowed to do, or, I just think we need to not do exactly what Charlottetown or any other municipality is doing just because they're doing it, but there has to be a standard out there that is common practice for taxis, so we're not reinventing a wheel here if it's...
Yeah, no, it's just something that my drivers wanted me to bring up at this meeting to see if you talked about it or whatnot.
Yeah.
And like I said about the marijuana store as well, there's nothing in there stating that we can't do that, so I take it that it's legal too. Yeah. We don't do it at Air Cape. I don't know what anybody else is doing, but I've been telling the drivers not to do it because it could be in the same section, just because it's not worded marijuana, but liquor's there. I just don't know if we're allowed to or not. So.
Gordon, is there a reason why that's in there?
Why the prohibition on delivering alcohol?
Yeah, is it provincial? Is there something provincially that maybe prohibits it?
That section of our bylaw has been there for a long time. At the meeting that we had with bylaw policy and bylaw policy review committee with the drivers, there was some discussion on that as well, and the sense from that discussion was that we were going to leave the wording as is, but that's again up to council to consider and take under advisement, I guess, and we can have further discussion on it. It's
yeah, okay.
Just a question, as a non-drinker, but what would be wrong with a senior calling up and say, can you deliver a bottle? So, you know, I guess, did the province have a clause during COVID for something? I thought I saw some discussion.
Yeah. Right now, if you have a restaurant with liquor in there, you can deliver the alcohol up until the end of December. You're allowed to. Before, you weren't before COVID.
When you say you, can a taxi do the delivering for them?
I talked to the Liquor Commission. They said if I had a restaurant that was doing takeout orders and they wanted to deliver alcohol, I would be allowed to do it that way.
So does this clause of ours contradict that in any way, shape, or form, Gordon?
What I was going to...
Maybe it's another clause we could have a look at.
It's totally up to council's discretion what you want to do with this one. It's just, it's been prohibited to date.
It's been prohibited for years, but I mean, how do you police it, you know? So
maybe when we're updating our bylaw, this may be where there's some wiggle room too. I personally, I can't see I've been a serious problem, but anyway, somebody else got their light on here.
Yeah. I'll wait till you're done there, Chris.
I'm good. That's all I had.
That's all you had?
Yeah.
Just on that item, I'm not sure where I stand with that. I know I know of people that could use that service, but just because they're seniors, and but I have to think about that one. The one I wanted to go back to was, at the first we started to talk about ride sharing. is there a definite, what do you mean by ride sharing, and where are we going with that? I guess I need clarification on what ride sharing
Ride
is.
sharing would be if the four of you want to go to the same place or on the way, pick you up on the way,
Yeah.
drop her off here, drop him off there, and you're just sharing a taxi basically with different people.
Wasn't that always allowed?
No, see, I don't know. If you get right into
I think they always did.
This is, it's like hailing cab, like there's no hailing a cab in Summerside, is what they call ride sharing. So if I'm driving down the street with this gentleman in the back of the car and you're waving me down, I can't stop. That's his taxi.
I agree with
But
that.
if you put this ride sharing into play, then they can share rides. We can set up in my system that I can pick up 4 calls with 1 car.
Yeah, I guess the way I took it is if you came to my place and it was 4 people.
I think in ride sharing, this, don't we mean like as in Uber? Yeah. Isn't that what we're
No.
referring to as ride share in this?
Yeah, because that's where I was going.
That's what ride sharing is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have drafted it so far with some very broad language.
Yes.
So, yeah, and that's where I was going. Does ride sharing allow Uber? But I don't see the word ride sharing in here.
Yeah, it's in the definitions of what we're
It's in the
proposing
definitions?
to include under the definition of cab or taxi. Would also include the vehicle.
Like
companion.
Uber isn't just strictly ride sharing, they taxi as well. The ride sharing is part of Uber where they can share the same car with different customers on the way, is what that means really.
So are you,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, just wondering, is that, you didn't get to it yet, I guess, but is that something that council could have another look at in regards to the alcohol delivery?
I have that as something
Yeah.
that we can take back to BPR along with the 1 million versus 2 million.
Right.
But I wanted to get back to the alcohol delivery part. You sort of skipped over that one. I think that's something that if it's going to be discussed further, we do have to put marijuana in there as well because they're both
Yeah.
run by the provincial government
Right.
now, so it's not.
And they're both a drug
Yes.
either way you look
Yes.
at it, so.
So if we're looking at 13, I think we have to maybe, I'm not sure what would be the proper wording, Gordon, but you can't do one without the other. In my
Right.
mind, it's provincially run establishments for the purpose of selling alcohol or marijuana, so I don't know how we can look at one without
What's the
looking at the other.
difference when we say pick him up, take him to the liquor store and then take him back
Exactly.
home?
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? What's the difference than us just going to the liquor store and pick it and
I
then
agree.
dropping it off? You know,
I agree.
it's the same thing, just he's gotta spend more money to get there and get back, cause it's 2 fares a return call compared to just an extra $1 for 1 call where we would deliver it.
Right.
So,
So are you jumping yourself out of a call?
that's fine. It's a lucrative business that we could get into delivering alcohol, which they do in a lot of cities, and they make a lot of money at it as well, which would help the taxi industry out for fares. Since the fares are so low, it would give a higher call volume.
So
Justin?
if it was to be allowed,
From
is
the
there,
liquor stores.
there's no set rate for that? Every driver would set their own rate?
Pardon?
Every driver would set their own rate?
No,
If I called to have a
Pepsi?
bottle of Kickapoo Joy Juice picked up, would I be charged
Crazy straw.
more than, yeah, whatever,
no, it's just a regular fare, and then we charge an extra $1 for delivery.
okay.
And all the companies do that in town, as far as I know, so.
Okay.
Madam Chair, the floor is still yours. I think you got some other links.
I know, Justin, you want to go ahead first, or?
Yeah, sure. It's
Yeah,
just
okay.
a comment, I guess,
had
just
a
for the sake of
comment.
having the discussion. When it comes to it, I personally am in favor of it. I mean, it's a product that you can legally buy as long as you guys are, you know, doing the appropriate IDing and everything. Like if something was to happen, correct me if I'm wrong, Gordon, but it's not gonna come back on the city. you know, your driver
It would be the
is gonna be the
driver
one
if
who's
he sold it
responsible
to a
for
child, then
selling
yes,
to a
that's on
minor,
the
or-
driver.
yeah. Same as cigarettes or
Be no different
anything
than
else.
me being underage, standing outside the liquor store, and you go in for me, and then come out and hand it
Yeah.
to me, then you're at fault, not who drove me,
Yeah.
or not the liquor store, not
And you can get your marijuana through the mail
Yeah.
anyway, and then, I mean, you're not gonna hold the post office responsible for, yeah, so I mean, I'm just for the sake of argument and discussion, I don't see a reason, for me anyway, to be against it.
As for medicinal purposes as well, I guess.
Medicinal, recreational, as long as it isn't
Yeah.
criminal.
I just agree with you, Justin. I thi-
Disagree or agree?
I agree.
Okay.
I just agree with you, because I think it's rather sad that maybe a senior's home and they do want a bottle of liquor, and there are actually seniors in the manor that like to have a bottle of liquor delivered once in a while, and I don't think we should be regulating that as long as things are done up front. It's legalized and marijuana is legalized, and I think it's time to get with the program, I guess, in today's world. That's my opinion on that. I don't like to, I wouldn't want to see any illegal activity go on, but I think as long as it's legal, that we should look at that.
Thank you. Well, Madam Chair, the floor is still yours.
I have nothing else, no, nothing further, no.
Your light's not, okay, there's a,
They can hear me anyway. Okay, so, did you guys want to say anything, or, come on up.
My name's Judy Arsenault. I live at 49 Maplewood, and I'm one of the owners of United Taxi. And I want to get to the definition of ride sharing. Ride sharing is Chris's definition. Yeah, that's one. But the new modern parlance is Uber, Lyft, and everything else that goes with it, which these days does not have a really good reputation in a lot of places. And it would be good to get that defined and regulated properly, whether or not you want it here. That's all because other cities have disallowed it.
Right.
And it might be a thought that you should be thinking about in your community.
Perfect. Excellent. Wrote that down. Judy, while you're there, sorry, did you want to comment on the 1 million versus 2 million?
I can't really because I'm not a driver, and I know the cost would be prohibitive to some people. But personally, I think it would protect them.
Right.
But that's only my opinion.
Yep. And the alcohol, marijuana?
I think it should be delivered. I'll be a senior one day.
Now look out for yourself. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Miles?
Sure.
No, you're good? Okay.
What was our intent when rideshare is in there? What was the meaning that the bylaw committee had in mind when we had the word rideshare in there?
It was to broadly include ride-sharing vehicles under this bylaw.
Meaning Uber?
Correct. The Uber, the company
Or
Uber is
whoever.
not, there are companies in Prince Edward Island
Whatever.
who have been in touch with us, who are indicating that they are soon to be offering ride-sharing services in Prince Edward Island. So under the bylaw that we have today, there's absolutely no regulation of that. So the intent by including into the definition of cab or taxi, because if you look at how we have always defined in section 2.1D a cab or taxi, it's always been defined, and it's still in this draft defined as a vehicle which bears identification designating it as a taxi cab. So
As long as if you're gonna allow the ride share, just make sure that
you have to come to the microphone there, just so everything's
if
recorded.
they're gonna accept the ride share, like they're gonna be affiliated with the taxi stand, they gotta have identification on their car too, because I brought that up last time, that you just wanted to scrap that topper or something there, and it wouldn't be a good idea. So maybe if you're gonna put the ride share in there, make sure they're affiliated with a taxi stand and they have toppers too, so.
So how the draft is currently drafted, a vehicle intended for ride sharing would be under all the same rules
Right,
as
okay.
a taxi. They would be one and the same, so they would
Okay.
have to have identification.
Yeah, I'm just going off
Yeah.
of how it's worded.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious as to your comment about ride sharing not being a positive experience. So I've used ride share in other communities, say if you're in Toronto or Quebec or wherever, and you hail a cab or hail a ride share like through Uber or whoever, they've shown up, there's been no identification, and the experience for me was positive. So I'm just curious as to, is our purpose of updating this bylaw to advance and get to where we should be with other communities, or is it to, I'm just, I don't know what the purpose of.
Yeah, this is simply my opinion, and this is for council to decide, but the broad definition that we've included doesn't restrict ride sharing from operating, it just kind of puts it on the same playing field as a taxi stand. And with Uber specifically, the Uber cars that I've been in have had identification, right? That they're Uber car, they're gonna stick with us.
But not with the placard usually.
Not with something on top, but there has been identification. So,
Gotcha.
that part.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
So if that's it for a taxi bylaw, then I guess you guys are going to do a review on this, Councillor Adams. And is there any, as Mayor says, diary date on that, or CAO Rob?
Thank you. I think what we'll do is we'll get the Bylaw Policy and Review Committee together sometime within the next couple of weeks, review what we've heard here tonight, and try to bring back something to the December committee meeting.
December committee meeting.
Yep.
I would suggest probably that, but I don't know for sure, but the busiest time could be the Christmas season coming up for the taxi companies and drivers, so maybe if we're gonna have something in place, they'll know what it is before the Christmas season, but I got a feeling it would be a busy time, Christmas and New Year's.
Yes, and December committee meeting will be the beginning of the month. So is there a date on that meeting? December 1st? Okay. So we'll take the taxi bylaw back to committee meeting on December 1st for those of you that are interested in coming back. Thank you.
If I could just add this, Councillor Ramsey. In the meantime, if you happen to think of, if the drivers or the owners happen to think of something else that should be brought to our attention, feel free to submit it to the CEO or to the chair of the committee. And so we want to make sure when we get this approved, at the end of the day, that it's suitable to all taxi companies and to the public and meets all the regulations.
So for that insurance, do you want a letter from all the owners there brought in to say like who would like to have it at 1 million, who would like to have it at 2 million, what their opinions are on that, or just let it go? Or
well, how many different opinions would we get, and then we still
you're
have to
going to
make
get a
a
few
decision.
from AirCab, I can tell you that. There's 18 owners.
Okay.
Again, the purpose of the municipality regulating the insurance is not necessarily to find the number that the industry, I mean, obviously it has to be a number that works for the industry, but the reason for regulating it is the protection of the public, so that's I think that would be the driving force, as long as it's a number that's reasonable for the industry, right?
Yeah.
So if this is a piece of red tape that we can get out of the way for the industry, it's like any business, there's always too much red tape, but if we can get some of it out of the way and still have the protection of the industry and the people and the public, I guess that's the way to go.
I think for council though, what my advice would be for your the thing that you should put the most weight on in your consideration is the protection of the public.
Yeah,
If
it-
the insurance is to protect their
The
potential
riders.
passenger who gets injured, right?
I think he had mentioned, this gentleman had mentioned about the insurance companies didn't request it or require it.
No, they don't. They just require 1 million because that's what's in the bylaw.
So would we, Gordon, would we be indirectly telling the insurance companies what they should do?
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm not sure if it's a good idea or not. I would think that the insurance companies would, they've been in their business for years. Yep, I'm just thinking out loud here.
They would love to see it at 2 million, just like any other business, right? Just like I'd like to see the taxi fares go up in Summerside. Do you know what I mean? So,
I can see why it's recommended, but at the same time, I think we should take a look around, not just to Charlottetown, but a couple of other areas in the Maritimes to see what their taxi, what their insurance is. And if we're the only one that's saying it's got to be 2 million, then we need to take a real good look at it. If we're not, then I think, you know, we got a decision to make.
Just for council's awareness, we've increased, based on recommendations from our insurance company, we've increased the amount of insurance that we require for promoters and everybody that comes into the credit union place. It used to be $1 million, then it's been 2 million, now it's up to 5 million for lots of different acts. So, I mean, they're really numbers that drive the protection of the public. And that's the purpose of them, right? And if our bylaw requires 1 million, then absolutely, that's what the insurance company's they'll.
so I think this gentleman here, I can't, right there, you said you have $2 million coverage on yours, or is that a company car or a personal car? Just
Since that time I retired, I just kept on getting the 2 millions. I just think, you know, if you were to get into a situation, if you were going to be sued, $1 million is just not enough anymore.
yeah, no, I was just wondering if
Hopefully
it was
I'm like
a
you,
fleet car.
I don't ever foresee the day that hopefully that'll be the case, but I just think, you know, in today's world, you know, 2 million is probably the minimum that I would carry, but anyway, that's just my own personal thing.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering if it was on a fleet
No,
of
it's
cars
not on
from
the
City
fleet, it's just on my own
Summerside or
personal vehicle and
Okay, yeah.
my own desire to make sure I have the protection that I need to have in place.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that, and everybody's feedback. Thank you. That's how we're going to get this done and get it done right. So I guess if there are no other questions, we'll adjourn this part of the meeting. And are we going to stay on police, or are we going to go back now to, we'll go back? Yeah.
Planning board.
Okay, planning board, yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll turn it at this point over to the chair, Councillor Brian McFeely, planning board. Thanks, Councillor Ramsey and Councillor Adams.
I thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, folks. So we'll call the November 3rd meeting of Planning Board to order and ask for a motion for approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Ramsey, or seconded by Councillor Adams, that the agenda be approved as circulated. The first thing on the agenda is a discretionary use for 149 Industrial Crescent. And I'll read the recommendation into the record. Supporting explanation, the purpose of the zoning amendment, discretionary use, is to allow a business or professional office to use a portion of the building located at 149 Industrial at Crescent. A business or professional office requires a discretionary use approval from council in the M1 light industrial zone. Business or professional office means a building or part thereof used for the transacting business or for providing professional services to clients, such as accountants, architects, engineers, insurance agents, financial advisors, lawyers, and realtors, but shall not include retail selling of any product on the premises and does not include a medical office. Background: an application was received from Roberts Holding Inc., represented by Blaise Roberts, for 149 Industrial Crescent, PID number 310573, to allow business or professional offices a discretionary use in the light industrial M1 zone. The existing building is a 44,617 square foot. We got two figures in here, Linda. 35,050 square feet, which is industrial use and will remain as such. I take that to mean the total building is 44,600 and the 35 is being used for industrial. Okay. The remaining 99,567 square feet represents existing office or space that is not suitable for industrial use because of its limited size and our location in the second floor. The applicant is proposing to utilize the existing proposed office space highlighted as individual offices and lease these spaces to tenants. And the diagram showing the spaces is included, Your Worship. Report under section 5.7 zoning bylaw. When planning board reviews a discretionary use, it shall consider the following general criteria as applicable. A, conformity with all requirements of this bylaw. Staff comment, this application requires a discretionary use approval in the M1 light industrial zone in order to conform to this bylaw. If council approves a discretionary use for the business or professional office use, the applicant will be permitted to convert the existing office space into independent offices subject to a building permit. B, conformity with the official plan. Staff comment, the discretionary use conforms to the official plan. C, suitability of the site for the proposed development. Staff comment, this site is suitable for this development as the applicant is converting an existing building. There is enough on-site parking for the proposed use. D, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses. Staff comment, the property is zoned light industrial M1. The existing M1 zone allows office space as an accessory use to a main industrial use. The surrounding land uses are light industrial with high density residential to the north of the subject property. There is also restricted use, place of worship nearby, that was approved by council in 2013, and the map here shows the subject property in relation to the other zoned areas. E, any comment from residents or other interested person. A public meeting was held on October 14, 2020. The public meeting notice was advertised in the October 2nd edition of The Guardian. 14 letters were mailed to 15 property owners. Blaise Roberts from Roberts Holding, Inc. spoke, providing an overview of the proposed intent for the discretionary use. Staff comment, no written comments were received prior to the public meeting regarding this application. No one from the public spoke at the public meeting regarding this application. F, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking, and parklands for accommodating the development and any projected infrastructure requirements. Staff comment, the city's water supply and sewer treatment system can handle the additional loading created by discretionary use. Industrial Crescent has a 200 millimeter distribution main on the east side of the road and has a 200 millimeter gravity collection sewer main on the west side of the road that fronts this property. The existing street and storm sewer will accommodate the proposed discretionary use of the building. The property has three-phase electrical service currently. If the proposed discretionary use requires a change in the electrical service size, the property owner's electrical engineer will determine the new load of the building. The city can size the pad mount transformer accordingly. Please note, new pad mount transformers can take up to 6 months to arrive once ordered. Depending on site conditions, there may be additional cost to upgrade the service. There is adequate parking for this development. G, impact from the development on pedestrian, vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally. Staff comment, the proposed development does not or has minimal impact on pedestrian vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally. The net increase to the existing traffic flow as a result of discretionary use will be a negligible amount of volume on Industrial Crescent. The existing parking will accommodate the 22 parking spaces that are required. H, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources. Staff comment, no negative impacts. I, impact on city's finances and budget. Staff comment, the development does not impact city finances or budget. J, other matters as specified by this bylaw. Nothing there. K, other matters as considered relevant. Staff comment, the applicant recognizes demand for business and office rental space. Staff review, city staff supports the application from Roberts Holding Inc. for discretionary use. As per section 5.10, subsection B3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward to council for a final decision. So the planning board recommendation that the application from Roberts Holding Inc. for 149 Industrial Crescent, PID number 889626, to allow a business/professional office as a discretionary use in the light industrial M1 zone be recommended to be approved by council. And I would call for a mover and a seconder for that from planning boards. Moved by Carrie, seconded by Barb, and we will open the floor to any questions or comments.
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward, and we had a very good presentation from the owner at on whatever date it was, October 14th, I guess, meetings.
That building's been empty for a long time, and so I think it's great that the new owners are doing something with it, so yeah, I'm good with it.
Any other questions or comments before we call for the question? Just for the planning board, yeah. The recommendation to go to the special council meeting following our committee meetings tonight. So, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary? Motion carried. So we'll move on quickly here. Some more reading for zoning amendment for 64 St. Clair Street. The recommendation, supporting explanation. Purpose. The purpose of the zoning amendment is rezone from R1 to R2 to allow a semi-detached dwelling. The applicant is proposing a semi-detached dwelling on the corner of St. Clair Street and Haley Drive. The semi-detached dwelling will be fronting St. Clair Street. Semi-detached means a building that is divided vertically into two side-by-side dwelling units. Both units are constructed directly on grade and separated from each other by a vertical wall or of concrete or masonry firewall. Semi-detached dwellings require individual public utilities and street frontage for each dwelling unit and can be subdivided as per section 8.15. Background, an application was received from RM Investments, Inc. for PID number 1077213 to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw from single-family residential R1 zone to low-density mixed residential R2 zone. A public meeting was held on October 14, 2020, and council gave first reading on the same date. Report under section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw. When planning board reviews the zoning bylaw amendment, it has to consider the following general criteria as applicable. Under section 8.4 of the Parks and Green Space Plan, the criteria of B, C, E, G, and H must be considered. A, conformity with all requirements of this bylaw. Staff comment. If council approved the zoning amendment from R1 to R2, the applicant will be permitted to construct a semi-detached dwelling subject to R2 development standards as noted below. A minor variance for lot depth will be required subject to development officer approval. The proposed building location meets or exceeds all the required setbacks from property, and the chart is attached there defining the R2 zone lot area, lot depth, frontage, front yard, side yard setbacks, and rear yard, maximum height and flank yardage for council's information. I'm not going to read that all into the record. And the plot plan showing the building on the lot is also included there. B, conformity with the official plan. Staff comment, the rezoning conforms to the official plan, section 5.1, residential development, and section 4, subsection 4.1, neighborhood parks. Residential development, 5.1. The first part of this section describes general residential development policies pertaining to housing options, zoning categories, and residential land allocation. The second part describes specific policies pertaining to special planning and development areas and locations for high-density housing. The third part deals with other residential issues. 5-point residential densities, low-density housing type, single-family, semi-detached, duplexes, and the minimum lot sizes are included there as well. Neighborhood parks. Summerside has 6 neighborhood parks which are oriented to more active recreational needs. Lions Club Park, Leger Park, Billy Bridges Park, Wilmot Community Center Park, Lafergie Park, Meadow Heights Park. The average size of neighborhood parks is 4.0A, 1.61. Is that acres? Hectares? Hectares. Though Billy Bridges and Meadow Heights parks are considerably smaller. Typically, neighborhood parks include a baseball field and sometimes a tennis court or basketball court. They may also include some of the same facilities typically found in many parks. And the map there shows the subject property. C, suitability of the site for the proposed development. Staff comment, this site is suitable for low-density residential land use. Existing public street network and municipal services and parkland are available for this development. D, compatibility of the proposed development surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses. Staff comment, the subject property abuts residential land uses with R1 zoning along the north and east boundaries and R2 zoning along the south and west boundaries. The rezoning from R1 to R4 would be, that should be R2, would be compatible with the surrounding zoning, as both R1 and R2 zoning are low density land uses. And again, we have the map showing the subject property of St. Clair. E, any comments from residents or other interested persons. Staff comment, a public meeting was held on October 14, 2020. The public meeting notice was advertised in the October 2nd edition of the Guardian. 22 letters were mailed to 18 property owners. Robert Moffat, RM Investments, Inc., provided an explanation along with the proposed site plan and building plans. No written comments were received from the public regarding this application. No one from the public spoke at the meeting regarding this application. F, adequacy of existing water, sewer, roads, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking and parkland for accommodating the development of any projected infrastructure requirements. Staff comment, the city water supply and sewer treatment system can handle the additional loading created by the change in zoning. Rezoning this development from R1 to R2 increases the loading on the lift station by less than 1% of the calculated future loading for the entire drainage basin. City does not see this as a significant load change, therefore there is no expectation of the developer to contribute to upgrading the new lift station or a new lift station. St. Clair Street has a 200 millimeter distribution main on the west side of the street that can handle the water requirements for this change in zoning. The developer is responsible for any new water service required in the connection to the city water distribution system. The city's sewer main infrastructure for this development is a 200 millimeter gravity collection main on the east side of St. Clair Street that can handle the additional sewer loading from this development. The developer is responsible for the new service connection to the main. All costs associated with development into the city's infrastructure is costs to the developer. The existing street and storm sewer will accommodate the proposed rezoning from R1 to R2. The existing electrical service can accommodate the proposed change from R1 to R2. There is ample parkland, 5 acres within 400 meters of the subject property in Lafergie Park. G, impacts from the development on pedestrian and vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally. Staff comment, there will be one additional access added due to the zoning change which will have minimal effect on pedestrian and vehicular access and safety. H, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources. Staff comment, there is no impact on environmental, scenic, or heritage resources. I, impacts on city finances and budget. Staff comment, there is no impact on city's finances and budget. Other matters as specified in this bylaw. Staff comment, there are no other matters as specified in this bylaw. K, other matters as considered relevant. Staff comment, the 4 lots to the immediate south of the property were rezoned from R1 to R2 and approved by Council in July 2016. Staff have reviewed the criteria under Section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw and Section 8.4 of the Parks and Green Space Plan. Staff support the application from RM Investments to rezone from R1 to R2. And as per Section 5.10, subsection B3 of the zoning bylaw, the planning board shall make a recommendation to council on this application before it is approved or denied. The planning board recommendation, whether carried or defeated, will be brought forward to council for a final decision. So the planning board recommendation, the planning board have reviewed the criteria under Section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw and Section 8.5 of the Parks and Green Space Plan. The planning board recommend the application received from RM Investment Inc. for PID number 1077213 to amend the city zoning bylaw from single-family residential R1 zone to low-density mixed residential R2 zone be approved by council. And we would seek a mover and a seconder from planning board for that. Moved by Councillor Ramsey, seconded by Councillor Adams. Any question or discussion?
Do you want to hear from the public on this? Oh, yes. Nobody here.
The gallery is overloaded. Councillor Campbell.
Just for the record, you read in 8.5 of the Parks and Green Space. Should be 8.4.
I thank you, sir, for the correction. I'm glad you were listening. I thought you might have been sleeping over there when we were reading that, but no. Anything else? Any other questions, comments? If not, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye. Contrary? Motion carried. And that is, I think, yep, that is the end of the agenda items for planning board. So we'll have a motion for adjournment.
Thank
So
you.
moved by Councillor Adams.
We'll go back to the police.
We are adjourned, sir.
Thank you, Councillor McFeeler. We'll go back to the police, fire, and emergency services. Councillor Ramsey.
So
Yep.
we are, so.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Police is here, so I wonder if we should.
Chief, I believe you just
Chief is here. He just went into the room there.
Right
I
around
think
the
Linda
corner.
might let him know.
Linda.
Linda?
Just, is the chief out there? Chief Poirier?
Chief, he's right there. I think. No, he's with Jump Hall.
I think they just went in the side room there.
Yeah, I think they're in the side.
Freshen up the coffee.
Okay. Well, again, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Chief Poirier, for attending. And I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask for approval of the agenda. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So then the first thing now on the agenda will be Glen Drive speed limit reduction within city limits from 50 kilometers an hour to 40 kilometers an hour. And I believe that's Councillor McDougall that had that on there. So I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. this area, I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with it, but Glen Drive comes through Linklater and comes up to South Drive. And basically from Linklater's warehouse to city limits is quite a stretch. Now, there's, when you come up to the corner, when you come to city limits, it's a 50-kilometer, but whenever you hit that sign, you're coming up to a corner that turns to go out to South Drive. And there's about 8 houses on that stretch, and about 4 of them have changed hands in the last couple of years. And there's kids, where there was never kids there for quite a while, right? So the neighborhood is changing. So I know that it's a challenge sometimes when you're coming out of Tanton Drive. I know personally myself, I've looked that way, nothing, looked that way, and then when you go to look, there's somebody coming around the corner, and it's normally a bigger truck, right? So I think it's time that we got police and tech services or whatever to look at that area. I know we put some children playing signs in there, but I think it might be time to look at the speed limit in that section from the city limit to South Drive. So just a request that the police look at it and come back to us with a recommendation, I guess.
No problem, Councillor. Myself and probably Aaron McDonald will have a look at it.
Okay, that's...
And bring back a recommendation.
Yeah, that's fine. That's all I need.
Maybe put a stop sign there?
Yeah.
I'll show myself.
Speed bump, speed bump.
Oh.
I was going to ask you.
Is it a school zone? Well, thank you. So that's going to be, Chief, you're going to look at that and get back to us. And is that fine with you, Councillor McDougall? Okay, thank you. So then we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is Traffic and Parking Bylaw Appendix C, time limited parking zones. So, wait now. Yeah, okay. Traffic and Parking Bylaw. So, Carrie, did you put that on there?
Was that to go from the 1 hour back to or the
No,
pilot project?
No,
In June of 2019, downtown Summerside came with a request to change some parking time limits downtown.
Okay, right.
And when the resolution was passed, it was for a 6-month period, which would have brought it to June or December 2019. So that's since expired. So it sort of reverts back to what was previously in the bylaw. However, the signage that exists downtown now doesn't coincide with what's in the bylaw. So it's just sort of updating, or just to see what direction council would like to go.
Thank you, Brian. So I know personally, there's been quite some time that we didn't have an officer downtown doing checking on parking, and is that correct, Chief Poirier?
Yeah, that's correct. And there was quite a few tickets handed out for over the 1 hour parking. So people started complaining, I guess, that they didn't feel it was long enough to do the shopping and things like that.
That's right, and so the commissioner is now back in place, and so that's what's happened with me as a councillor. I'm getting lots of calls that the 1 hour parking isn't long enough. So I put a call, or I guess I sent an email out to everyone to find out if they were having any complaints as well. So I guess, and it was in place for 6 months or a year, Brian?
6 months, I think.
It was just 6 months?
Originally, it was 6 months, but
Okay.
the signage is still remains in place. So the signage says this is the limit, but the bylaw actually states otherwise.
Okay, so we have to look at what we're going to do here. Okay, so then I'm just going to open the floor. Councillor Snow?
Personally, I think we need to sort of take a step back and maybe involve the people that really are affected by this. So make sure we get downtown in the room, get the businesses. Like you, I have heard from some businesses in the downtown area that they felt the parking might not have been long enough. I know later on we're talking about, you know, expanding the parking over Christmas, and that's for a reason. You know, people go shopping, people go, you know, you want people to spend time in the downtown. So I think it would only be appropriate for us to make sure that we reach out to downtown, Angie now, and get her feedback from the local businesses and feel what we want to do moving forward. I think we're sort of putting the cart before the horse here a little bit, even discussing this, because ultimately they should have the input and the say on what they feel is best for their area.
Yes, I think it is too, but I think it's important that we bring it up so that they know that we're going to be talking about it, right? And kind of gives them an idea to start having some conversations about it. Councillor Brian.
Yeah, I think we went to the 1 hour at the request of the downtown.
Downtown, that's right.
Organization. And, you know, there was a fair amount of complaints. The cost of changing these signs over isn't cheap either. So I think we want to do it and get it right, Councillor Snow. I mean, I think your point is well taken. Let's step back, find out what's palatable, and do it right and do it once, and not be flipping back and forth, because there is a cost associated with that, and I'm particularly cognizant of small business and the environment that we're in, and you know, it's going to be a tough winter ahead for a number of businesses. So I think we should be doing everything we can to you know, reach out to them, make sure that their needs are being met in this. So I would certainly agree. Let's, you know, get their view and do what we need to do to get it right once and leave it there.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. Councillor McColeman.
I think the whole premise behind it, that 6-month time, was to allow people that were coming downtown to shop the opportunity to find parking spaces, because what was happening, and I really don't want to offend anyone, but some of the parking spots which were at a premium downtown were being utilized by maybe people working downtown and just moving the car whenever they would know at that time if the commissionaire was coming around. So it made it very difficult, and some of those complaints did come from actual residents who would want to go into the bank or do some shopping at one of the merchants' locations, and they couldn't find a spot. I know that there's parking in municipal parking lots, but again, that very premium park time or downtown parking is very limited, and that's where that complaint source started back last year, 2019. The other thing is the point about the cost of new signage. You know, we want to make sure that people feel when they go downtown that there's going to be places for them parking. So I have no objections one way or the other, but I know one of the things we did talk about is making sure that at Christmas time that there would be extended parking to really help the merchants downtown, so that there would be places for people to park and get in, and you know, to give people enough time. So I'm not against it or anything like that. I did check with Downtown Summerside. We haven't been able to connect for our meeting, but Angie had not heard, as executive director, she had not heard from people, maybe 1 or 2 comments from people, but she hasn't heard a lot of feedback on the parking as yet. So I'm open, but I just want to make sure that it is being utilized for customers and that it doesn't open up people parking there and just holding the spots because they work and don't want to walk too far to the buildings.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Mayor Basil.
Thank you, Councillor. Just my thoughts, and I guess the councillors have probably heard me yakking about this for a number of years, but I would like to see no free downtown parking over Christmas, and I would support the 3 hours. I know we've gone through the COVID situation and businesses trying to survive, and they have free parking at all of the malls, which is fine. But that's just my personal opinion. I would support, and I think this the hour thing is should be changed back. But I'd like to see it go to 3 hours. That would prevent people from parking all day, and would probably help some of the downtown businesses get more business. And you'd have to enforce your too close to the corner parking and those kinds of things and overnight. But it's something we could try for over holidays to give the downtown business a little boost. And I would support the 3 hour. That's all I have to say. And who am I? I'm only one of the 9 votes.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor,
Yeah,
Did you-
it doesn't matter.
yeah.
I just, and I agree with all the comments sort of being made around, and I really think we need to, again, take that step back and really look big picture here, because downtown is gonna be transformative over the next little while. I have my opinions on what downtown should look like, and we all do. But I really think we need to, I don't think there's a reason to rush into anything here, and I think we need to make sure that we reach out to all the businesses. I've heard everything from, you know, making Water Street a one-way street with angle parking again to a number of things, longer parking, shorter parking. There's reasons for everybody to have their opinion on it. So I think we really, instead of doing this over and over again, let's make sure we really take our time, take into consideration everything that's all the opinions, and go forward.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that Deputy Mayor is going to connect with downtown, and that was something that we discussed over when this first came up last week. So, but I think it's important for us to kind of rehash where we were and where we're going, or where we think we need to be. But I know one thing, that the commissionaire was, I guess I should say, at a commission. We didn't have a commissionaire for a long time, so therefore we weren't getting any complaints. But as soon as our commissionaire came back, we started to get the complaints. Because I think he was maybe gone for about 6 months, Chief. Is that fair to say?
That's
6
fair.
or 8?
That's fair to say.
Yeah, and so we didn't get any complaints because people were just parking as long as they wanted. But now that he's back, and you know, people are getting, so we're getting the complaints, and we're trying to react to that. So, did you have something,
Well,
Chief?
like Councillor Snow mentioned, you know, you will have some time, because next on the agenda is the Christmas parking.
Right.
So if
That's on the
changed,
agenda tonight.
You'll have
Yeah.
till after December anyway, after December 31st to
Right.
to look at this.
Exactly, it'll give us some time, so, yeah. The folks in YouTube land will know what we're talking about when we move down on the agenda here in a minute, but Councillor Durant?
Thanks, Councillor Imsey. And just to, I guess, continue, Councillor Snow brought it up. I was going to, but I'll continue it. I'd really like to, not tonight, but maybe at an upcoming committee meeting, ignite or reignite the talk about making that section down there one way between, you know, whatever and whatever, water between Central and Granville, or whatever it is. I've been kind of on and off chatting to mostly business owners down there, and they are really keen on talking about that. Certainly not looking to make any decision anytime soon, but it is some bigger picture things that might solve some other things. So just maybe this is my serving notice. Maybe we can just ignite that again. I know it's been talked about before. I don't know how much, but it seems like something that might, especially with the redevelopment that's going on down there and the increased traffic, something that we can just have a chat on sometime, whether it's the spring or an upcoming committee meeting, tech services, police, whatever it may be, just to get some insight from yourself, Chief, and Director Aaron, just to see how that might work or could work, and maybe we can include downtown. Well, we have to include downtown. Yeah.
Certainly, one of the
Thank
big
you,
issues
Councillor.
that you'd have to look at is a survey done by Tech Services to see how much traffic, whether mostly going east or mostly going west, you know, and decide which way the angle parking would be if that was the case.
Yeah, certainly something to look into.
What about on a trial basis?
It would immediately triple your parking in the downtown core, or maybe not triple, that might be an over exaggeration, but it would more than double your parking in the downtown core.
Like the one we tried last year, the pilot project, what would happen if we tried it for a year or 6 months, you know, just to see?
Seems to me that
Try the one way.
You don't have to
There's,
etch something in stone.
There doesn't seem to be a lot of opposition to it, at least on a small survey scale. Like,
Just-
we're not talking I haven't been talking to everybody, but.
From what the general
it's-
public say.
The general public, as well as a handful of some business owners down there. I haven't spoken to all of them, but there's very little opposition. I know there may be from a practical standpoint, engineering standpoint, but just as an overall, you know, people trying to get their head around the concept, people are very receptive to it, just in general.
Thank you, Councillor Drawn. I have no idea. It's you or Carrie. Brian?
And I know Councillor Durant talked about it, but it seems to me we should assign this to a committee, take a look at all kinds of things being talked about, take a look at all the options and bring a recommendation back to council around all these options. I don't think we're going to resolve these things tonight. So.
No.
No. Just like Councillor McDougall suggested for his Glen Drive, just maybe have a brief meeting, like you said, Brian, at the committee level, and maybe there's a recommendation with some good reasoning for it or against it, and we can just go from there, vote on it, and that'll be it.
I don't know if I should do that or not. Are you with me, guys? Or no?
No, that's just, and I was just following up on what they were saying. I don't think it's beneficial for us to talk about this anymore until Angie chats with the business owners and the business owners tell her what their customers are telling them, so.
I'm correct in saying downtown would have an AGM coming up, so it's something now that we're talking about it, that would be a great avenue for them to have that discussion during their AGM, and then for us to follow through with some committee work to figure out options moving forward.
That's exactly where I was gonna go,
Right.
so.
And that's, and Councillor Corey, that's what happened. Our meeting was going to be a follow-up from the AGM, and that unfortunately canceled because of waiting for other things to happen. But the other thing too, there's other players that are involved, such as, say, economic development, and with, say, the large Arsenault Brothers apartment building almost at that point of completion, and now this core project. Like, there's a lot of moving parts, and so it would be really important for us to kind of have some updates from those and community services to, you know, some of the discussions that they're having that we may not be aware of, like as far as planned ideas or thoughts down that way when that development would come along. So I think with what Councillor Bryan has said, if we could just get some of those moving parts and we get an update, that would be really helpful to know about that.
Okay. That's it. So I think then what we'll do is we'll have Deputy Mayor Norma McColman speak with downtown, and then at a committee level after maybe Chief and Tech Services. I'm not sure what role you guys are going to play before committee gets involved, and maybe can start having some conversations with all the information coming back. Is that?
Sorry, Councillor, I guess once we understand what downtown Summerside is looking at in terms of ideas or things that they'd like to see, then maybe the Deputy Mayor can bring it back to me, and then we can probably assign some resources to researching it.
And then we'll go from there. Okay, that sounds great if everybody's good with that. Okay. So the next part of the agenda is, so it's downtown Summerside holiday parking, and we had a bit of discussion on that on this last topic. So if anyone has anything to add on that, not sure who put that on the agenda. Was it you, Mr. Mayor?
Which one was that?
The holiday parking?
Yeah, I had mentioned there earlier.
Okay.
I think other years we did something for downtown for the holiday parking, and I personally support that, and I'd like to see it because especially this year, because it's been a rough year for COVID and everything else, and I think it would probably help our downtown business association, and as Councillor Snow mentioned, with this block gone, and there's going to be some changes and another, hopefully soon, with new construction there, and so you know, maybe the whole area will have to be looked at, but I would like to see no parking for the Christmas season, no fee for the Christmas season, or at least 3 hours, so people would have time. And so that's my opinion on that. And I know you still have to enforce the overnight parking and the too close to the corner and those kinds of things, but maybe if the commissioner could find something else to do in that area for a couple of weeks to help the downtown businesses. But we'll leave that up to the police department and the chief to, but those are my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Your worship, in the past, by resolution of council, council made a resolution each year to have a 3-hour parking on Water Street and one of the back parking lots from mid-November until the end of December each year. So
Right.
if that's the wish of council,
Yeah.
I mean, resolution can be made.
It's a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So we could, yeah, if we could have a resolution made up, Brian, for our council meeting.
So usually it was Water Street from Granville to Central, and usually the parking lot in behind the police station as well, which is parking lot D.
Okay.
So what's that for the Christmas parking?
For the Christmas parking.
Well,
And
that's only 2 weeks before Christmas. When's the
no,
December?
it's mid-November till the end
Mid-November.
of
Oh,
December.
November. Okay, sorry.
And there would be a resolution from last year. I don't remember doing this last year myself. Does anybody else remember? Yeah, maybe there's a.
I have an old one here.
You have an old one? Okay, so maybe. Yeah, I don't recall, but yeah. We cancel Christmas, yeah. So if that's something we will look at then in the next while before the council meeting. And we did our taxi bylaw review. So with that, I guess police, we can adjourn our meeting.
I just,
Oh,
is fire included in this? I don't know what's on the rest of the agenda. I just wanted to add to your committee that just something for the public to know, longtime friend of Summerside, Mike McKeever, will be celebrating his 60th birthday this
Yes.
coming Monday.
okay.
So Mike, if everybody knows Mike, he gets around town and knows everybody and everything that's going on, so.
Great athlete in his day.
No, it's like Mike from Cedar.
Oh, the
Mike that
other
lived
Mike.
on,
Oh.
yeah, the other Mike, yeah.
Yes.
So he,
With the
he's
fire
feeling
department, too.
quite let down that he can't have his big party at the wing and his family all around him. So any well wishes that can be sent his way through his sisters or
Oh,
his
little
mom at
Mike.
Andrews would
Yeah.
be greatly appreciated.
Yes, yeah. And the other thing we should just talk about is our parade is still on. Apparently today, we heard, well, not apparently, we did hear that parade in Moncton has been canceled. So we were kind of getting a little worried, but they're having difficulty there with COVID. So we're still doing okay here. It's still on for November 27th, 6 o'clock, stationary parade. We've arranged for people, if they don't have a vehicle, that there will be, the Boys and Girls Club are going to supply bus service from Credit Union Place. So that was one thing we were trying to get out there for those of you who may not have a vehicle. But other than that, floats are to arrive down at Credit Union Place by 5 o'clock. And yeah, and then cars can arrive as they like. The parade starts at 6, and yeah, we should have a fun night.
Councillor Barb, anybody that's interested in floats, or do you know how many floats are registered now?
I don't know how many are registered now, but I think we have something like 230 spaces, Chief. I think you and Fire Chief did the walk, and I think that's
We have
so.
approximately 130 spaces, so there should be
Yeah.
lots of room.
So if
And-
anybody was interested, who did they contact?
So if they're interested, online, there's an application through the city. Just go on our website and you can print it off, or you can drop down to the fire hall. They have some at the front desk here at City Hall. And a couple of the firefighters were going to be delivering them to the businesses around Summerside this week. So, and it's free to enter. We're just asking for a donation. And we're going to try and help some families out with those donations. Yeah. So if there's any more questions on that? No? Thank you. The marching bands will have to stay home this year, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
I think we should add to the agenda, we had our Director of Community Services join us. Thank you, JP DeRosier. So do you have anything further at this time, Councillor Ramsey?
No, my meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
So is that all for committee meetings then? So we'll move into the special council meeting. Is that it then? Okay. Okay, we'll call the special council meeting to order, November the 3rd, 2020. We have a number of resolutions, and I believe the first resolutions come under Deputy Mayor McColman. Okay, and I guess for the record, we have all councillors present, and we're being recorded here on YouTube, so we have our Director Aaron McDonald still with us, our Director JP DeRosier, and our Police Chief is still with us, our CAO Rob, and our Director of Finance, Kristen, is with us. And welcome again, Colin, from the Journal Pioneer. You're with us for the council meeting. Brian Harlick is on the controls, so we'll turn it over to Deputy Mayor McColman.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council and directors. I'll just read a bit of a background or story on the Safe Restart funding, and then I will be bringing a resolution to council. The province of Prince Edward Island has worked to negotiate the Safe Restart Agreement with the Government of Canada. This agreement will provide financial assistance for reopening municipal services in Prince Edward Island to support critical needs for transit, protection of public health and safety, prepare for the potential future waves of the virus, and further support the safe reopening of economies across Canada. Municipalities that are eligible for funding under the Federal Gas Tax Fund in Prince Edward Island will be eligible for funding through the Safe Restart Program, or Restart Agreement. The City of Summerside is gathering costs considered to be eligible for this financial assistance, and once we are aware of approved funding, we will provide further details when we get that information provincially. The resolution that I'm bringing forward on behalf of council this evening is Resolution COS 20-106. It was moved by myself, Councillor Norma McColman, and seconded by Councillor Brian McFeely. Whereas the Safe Restart Agreement will provide financial assistance for reopening municipal services in Prince Edward Island to support critical needs for transit, protection of public health and safety, prepare for potential future waves of the COVID-19 virus, and further support the safe reopening of economies across Canada. And whereas a signed agreement to participate reflects the municipality's understanding on shared objectives and terms established by the Safe Restart Agreement between the Government of Canada and the Province of Prince Edward Island. And whereas the Safe Restart Agreement requires a formal resolution outlining participation in the program, be it resolved that the Council authorizes the City of Summerside to execute the confirmation of municipal services and agreement to participate. This resolution, COS 20-106, carried by the Council of the City of Summerside on November the 3rd. It's not carried yet, but I'm just reading it.
November the 3rd, 2020. Okay, it's been moved by Deputy Mayor McColman and seconded by Councillor Brian McFeely. Any questions on the resolution? I do not see any question lights on. All in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary nay? Carried.
That's it, Your Worship.
Oh, moving right along here. The one for 149 Industrial Crescent, I believe it's Councillor McFeely.
Yeah, I have three resolutions here, Your Worship, really a follow-up to our planning board meeting earlier this evening. First one is Resolution COS 20-107. Moved by myself, Councillor McFeely, seconded by Councillor Ramsey. Whereas an application was received from Roberts Holding Inc. for a discretionary use for PID number 889626 to allow a business or professional office use at 149 Industrial Crescent in the light industrial M1 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas the application was requested to utilize 882 square meters, 9,567 square feet of existing office or proposed space that is not suitable for industrial use for the discretionary use, be it resolved that Council approve a discretionary use to allow a business or professional office use at 149 Industrial Crescent in the light industrial M1 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, and this bears the recommendation of the Planning Board meeting on November 3rd, 2020.
Moved by Councillor McFeely and seconded by, sorry,
Councillor Ramsey.
Ramsey. Any questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Contrary nay. Carried.
Moving on, Your Worship, Resolution COS 20-108, moved by myself, Councillor McFeely, seconded by Councillor Ramsey. Whereas an application was received from RM Investment Inc. for a zoning amendment for PID number 1077213 from single-family residential R1 zone to low-density mixed residential R2 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, and whereas zoning bylaw amendment 366, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read the first time at the council meeting on October 14th, 2020. And whereas in accordance with section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw, council shall consider the following general criteria as applicable: conformity with all requirements of this bylaw, conformity with the official plan, suitability of the site for the proposed development, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses, any comments from residents or other interested persons, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking and parkland for accommodating the development, and any projected infrastructure requirements, impacts from the development on pedestrian vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally, compatibility of the development of environmental, scenic, and heritage resources, impact on the city's finances and budget, other matters as specified in this bylaw, other matters as considered relevant. Be it resolved that zoning amendment 366, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby declared as read a second time. And this bears the recommendation of the Planning Board meeting on October 3rd, 2020. And I'll read Schedule B into the record, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
Zoning Amendment 366, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. The City of Summerside, the Council of the City of Summerside, under the authority vested in it by Section 18 and Section 19 of the Planning Act, RSPI 1988, Cap P-8, hereby enacts as follows. 1. The zoning of portion PID number 107213, shown on Schedule B of the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, is designated as low-density mixed residential R2 zone, hereby excluding it from its former designation of single-family residential R1, and the map showing the subject property is attached, Your Worship.
Moved and seconded. Moved by Councillor McFeely and seconded by Councillor Ramsey. Any questions on the resolution? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary nay. Carried.
And finally, Your Worship, resolution number COS 20-109, moved by myself, Councillor McFeely, seconded by Councillor Adams. Whereas an application was received from RM Investment Inc. for a zoning amendment for a PID number 107213 from single-family residential R1 zone to low-density mixed residential R2 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas the zoning bylaw amendment 366, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read at 2 separate meetings of council held on different days. Be resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 366, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby formally adopted.
Moved by Councillor McFeely and seconded by Councillor Adams. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Contrary nay. Motion carried. Okay, is that, are there any other resolutions? We've gotten to them all. I see there's a couple items for the Committee of the Whole for the Municipal Government Act. So, before we adjourn, I do not see any lights on. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Moved by Councillor Snow and seconded by Councillor Ramsey. Everybody's hand going up at the same time. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, I believe we're finished